Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are actress Monica Ford and musical arranger and composer Aaron Zigman. Actress Monica Ford was born in Florida but raised in a big Texas family. She was homeschooled, she says, before it was cool. She was on the dean's list at Baylor, then transferred to the University of Texas at Austin. You've been in films, you've been in TV, we've seen you in art galleries because of your portraits, have been exhibited all over. What happens to a person who's homeschooled? That's pretty good.
Well, I think being homeschooled actually afforded me a lot more extracurricular activities, you know.
Why? How does it happen? What happens? Does your mother teach you, or do teachers come in, or what?
It was a mixture. My mom was sort of, I guess, on the front edge of that becoming sort of a hip, commonplace thing to be homeschooled. So she made her own curriculum. She was a teacher for 20 years before she began homeschooling me and my siblings.
So you were
she
all
had a lot of
homeschooled?
experience. We were.
But don't you fight with your mother? I mean, it's like your mom saying, go up and fix your bed. Now she's saying, read your English.
Yeah. I don't know. My mom actually helped me to fall in love with books. I mean, she opened up, you know, something that I've loved for the rest of my life. And we went and did so many amazing things that I really enjoyed that. Now in high school, she actually put us in a couple of little classes here and there in public school.
So you could do that?
Yeah.
Mix it?
In private school, yeah. So like she didn't want us to do biology lab in her kitchen.
Smart.
But other than that, yeah.
But when you talk about extracurriculum, those things all fit in? Those all fit into part of the curriculum? Like if you go to the theater or you go to the symphony, is that it? That type of thing?
Sure, outings like that. Or I was in karate. I got my black belt in karate and competed. I was on the swim team. I volunteered in...
The swim team where, though? Because you weren't in a school.
Yeah, but they're community.
I see,
swim
community.
Teams. Yeah. In fact, I went all the way to state in freestyle, you know.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So here you are. I guess you were smart enough because you got into Baylor and you made the dean's list. So that homeschooling worked.
I think it worked out. Yeah.
Did you want to be an actress?
I always enjoyed acting in little plays here and there, but I didn't really, I didn't really get a taste for it until I moved to New York for just a regular job and happened to go in on an audition for a stage show and actually got the part.
There was no show business in your family?
Nope, not really.
So it was really your own motivation?
Yeah.
And you didn't go to New York to act?
No, I went there for just a regular little job and then began having some friends who were actors and I went in on an audition for a stage show and got it. So.
And did you like it? Were you bit? Was that it?
Yeah, I caught the bug. I loved it, and eventually moved out to LA.
But why didn't you stay in New York then, if you like theater so much?
You know, I loved theater, but I was cast in this little independent film, and I just found that was sort of instantaneous, and I loved watching the dailies afterwards and interacting with so many different actors in so many different ways. And you know, there are two things that I love. I love them both for different reasons.
Yeah, because on the stage you're interacting.
Absolutely.
I mean, you really need that person, don't you, on stage?
Yeah, and I love being able to interact with the audience too as part of your show.
Right.
But I still get to do a little bit of that here.
So you started now directing and writing, and you said you love to read. So does writing go along in those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. I love to be able to create a character. I mean, you do get to create a character when you act, but you have a little bit more creative control. and I guess you kind of know where that character is born from when you write something.
Are you writing for yourself? Writing your own parts?
I do write some of my own parts as well, yeah.
And then, but how did you get into directing? Have you gone to workshops?
Probably just bossy.
You think that's all it takes?
No, I think just, I was just willing to try it, so I'm new to that, but it is something that's really fulfilling.
Yeah, like how many hyphenates do we have here?
I don't know, maybe I just have ADD.
Oh, that's interesting. Hyphenate ADD.
Yeah, maybe you could just cut all of them short with that.
That's interesting, because you, when I said you were writing and starting to direct, you also do self-portraiture. Do you do portraits of other people or only yourself?
I'm so new to it, and I began doing it just of myself. I had these little narratives that I just wanted to create on film. I had so many notes, on little napkins and coffee-stained pieces of paper, and so I decided to just start taking them, and it turned out that other people liked them too, and that's the greatest part of art, to be able to share it with people. So.
But you make yourself up. I see this one in color with your hands in the back and your feet. Tell me about that.
It's just something I saw in my head, sort of a crouched down figure, kind of restrained, and I think that everyone should take whatever they want from it, and it's really interesting to hear other people's take on it.
What kind of camera do you use?
I use a Nikon camera with a Fuji digital back, so the digital aspect of it really helped me to be able to learn quickly. Because I really had no experience with photography before that.
And when you set up your little scene, that scene isn't so difficult to set up because you can do. I guess you can get into that situation, without a lot of props. But how do you do it? Like this other one where you're on the floor, your hands are tied, there's a telephone in front of you, and you can tell us a little bit about that, the story of that. Well, I see you can't get to the phone.
I cannot get to the phone. Well, the way that I make those scenes happen is I set up my camera on a tripod, I set it on a timer, and then I have this little remote release, and it looks like a little turkey baster on a long tube. And so I squeeze that, and even with my hands behind me, I squeeze it and throw it out of the frame.
Is that what happens? And then how much time do you have?
I have about 10 seconds just to come back into that character.
Well, talking about characters, these pictures are beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
They're really beautiful.
Thank you.
And talking about characters, Billy Bentwood. Is he a guy?
He's a guy. He's a male character that I play in a burlesque show that I'm in here in Hollywood, the Pinup Girls. And,
where is that?
We've played all over Hollywood and actually outside of, in New York, in San Francisco, Arizona.
It's like an ensemble, or do people come and go?
We're a burlesque troupe. People have come and gone, but I've been there from the beginning.
You're your own burlesque troupe? Yeah.
I've been there from the beginning, but there are like a few core girls who have been in it from the beginning, and it's a very cool show. I start out as Billy, as a boy, and I turn into a girl by the end. It's a very fun show. In fact, our first music video was on the Logo Network recently. So
it's a play, basically. What kind of burlesque do you call it?
It's definitely a music and dance show.
Do you undress?
A little bit, yeah.
But I mean, Billy's dressed. He has his pants on.
Mm-hmm. Billy's dressed, and he transforms into a cherry-lipped burlesque girl.
And who makes the costumes?
We've had a lot of help with that from a lot of different people.
Because usually in burlesque, they like to make their own costumes, don't they, to show off their character or their name. Do you have a name other than Billy Bentwood?
No, just Billy Bentwood. So, I mean, we are the Pinup Girls, but my character is Billy Bentwood.
And then there's another character, Amelia Queenheart.
Amelia Queerheart.
Queerheart.
Yes.
I'm making her a queen.
Very LGBT friendly. I played Amelia Queerheart for a few oil wrestling events.
Oh, I see.
And that was super fun.
I bet it's fun. And I think all of these play things took you to this short film that you were casting called The Stray.
Yeah.
Tell me how you got that role and a little bit about the film, how long it is, who directed it, who wrote it.
It's a featurette, and it was written and directed by Tom Ford, and I'm very honored to say that the part of Mickey was written for me, and that is the part that I played. My co-lead in the film, her name is Allison Evans, and she's a beautiful person and a wonderful actress, very talented, and she played Linda.
And where was your location?
The location is a Craftsman home in Highland Park.
Beautiful.
It is gorgeous. It's a little bit over 100 years old.
And how did you find that place?
That is Tom Ford's place.
Oh, he lives there. Oh, so he has a
yeah.
So that kept the budget down.
Yeah, it kept the budget down, and I think that he wrote it in that setting, and I guess was inspired by it the entire time. So it was a beautiful place.
And it was accepted to Cannes.
It was accepted to Cannes.
I know. Are you excited?
Very excited.
And what about these other festivals? Can they be submitted to other?
I believe they are submitting it to other festivals, and it was just recently completed, so we'll see.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. What's the story? You're not a vampire, are you?
No. It is sort of a throwback to 70s horror a little bit in the imagery, which is really fun to play, but it's also twisted around this really beautiful love story. So there is sort of a tragic, kind of heartbreaking quality to it, but for all those people who love scary, gory movies, it'll give you your little fix for that,
It's
too.
perfect. I know you've worked with John C. Reilly.
I have.
And Jimmy Kimmel. And when you've worked with these kind of like pros, really pros, do you take something away from the situation?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't help but learn so much by just being in someone's presence who's worked so much and who are, those two guys that you mentioned, such creative, funny, talented people. So I just feel honored to be able to work with them at all. It's great.
And Tom Ford, with this great film that he wrote for you, I guess,
really
or the major,
talented guy.
Very talented, and is going on to make full feature-length films.
Yes.
And you will continue doing improv and burlesque?
Oh, absolutely. I hope so.
Okay. Well, we're so happy you were with us today.
Oh, thank you, Joan.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you.
And keep watching. Don't go away, because we have composer, musical arranger, Aaron Zigman. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with songwriter, producer, arranger, film composer, and Emmy Award winner, Aaron Zigman, who was born and raised in San Diego. While in his third year at UCLA, he signed a 4-year songwriting contract with Almo Irving, a leader in the publishing world. How did that happen, Aaron?
Oh, well, I was...
How old were you?
I was about 22.
Yeah.
And I was attending UCLA at the time, and I had about 3 different bands, and I was demoing my songs.
Oh, that's how you were out there then.
I was out there.
I see.
Yeah, I was out there every day.
I see. You weren't just in school.
I was just studying for midterms and finals, and cramming 2 weeks ahead of time before.
Did you finish? Did you ever finish
I left
UCLA?
my junior year at UCLA, about right in the middle of my junior year.
Yeah, but how could you give up such a fantastic opportunity?
At UCLA?
No, your songwriting.
They both were great opportunities, but the songwriting was, you're right. The songwriting deal was a 24-hour kind of situation. I mean, I was out there at Almo Irving, which I always say Almo Irving was equivalent to like the Brill Building back in the 30s and 40s.
Is that what? So there were people coming and
always
going?
People there. There were writers in rooms right next to you. I had my own office.
The Brill Building was really like rock and roll and.
Well, it goes back to the Gershwin days,
Yeah, the Gershwin days.
and Mercer and Johnny Green and all those there are various
right.
different, people used to congregate in that whole thing.
And that's how this building was where you were writing?
It was. It had a similar thing. I was so fortunate and blessed to be. I had the next office above me was Paul Williams.
Yeah.
And then I had the great Rod Temperton in another office, the guy who wrote all the songs for the late Michael Jackson.
Were they there?
They were there
all the time?
Not all the time.
Working,
some of them were there all the
in and
time.
out?
Paul
Yeah.
was there most of the time. I met so many people. Brenda Russell, who just wrote the Broadway show Color Purple.
Yeah.
And had a lot of hits herself. She and I have been friends ever since. That's
Because you
25
met
years.
in this. So is it a collaboration between you kind of musicians? Do you help each
Or,
other?
yeah,
or?
musicians and writers. It was some of us collaborated together. I actually met someone there that I had wound up forming a production team with for 5-6 years, so we did quite well. But I was, for me it was great because I was a piano player and an arranger.
I was going to
so
ask
I
you.
began to arrange other people's demos there.
Oh, is
and
that
that's
what
got me?
happens?
And that's what got me into the session click.
And what do you do when you arrange? They write the music and then
Well,
they
they
don't
write
know
music,
what to do?
yeah, and they have a tape of their song, and so I flush it out and write a chart for the band so the band can play it.
That's an arrangement.
It's an
Yeah, I
arrangement,
see.
yeah, and then all the little accoutrements that go on top of the song, and maybe there's a string line or a horn that you hear, of your famous songs, that there's that little kind of little motif that you sing in your head, right?
That's what the arranger does.
The arranger does that. Some of the great arrangers from like for instance the Motown period. There was Paul Reiser.
He did
did all the strings and I'll Be There and all the brass stuff and everything. So he was like an in-house arranger for Motown.
I see.
So I did it for various other producers around that time in that age period.
Did you come from a musical family?
Yes, my mother's a pianist and a harpist.
I see.
My cousin, my mom's first cousin was a guy by the name of George Bassman, who wrote Getting Sentimental Over You and scores for Marty. He wrote the film score for Marty and orchestrated some of Wizard of Oz. That was my distant related cousin who I studied with.
You worked with him, didn't you?
I befriended him for about 8, 9, 10 years.
Even he was distant, but
he was still here in L.A.
Is that right?
I sought him out, amongst to his chagrin, and then we connected finally, and we established this relationship. And I would say George was very much responsible for showing me the do's and don'ts of a lot of the orchestrations that I do for symphonic music.
Because he did Postman Always Rings Twice.
Postman Always Rings Twice. He wrote
Wizard
the
of
score
Oz.
for. He If I Only Had a Heart. He did the orchestration for that.
He did that.
Yeah.
So had he done all these by the time you got to him?
Oh yeah, he was in his probably middle 70s.
Oh, I see. So
And
he was
lived until
totally...
about he was 84, 85.
So that was a good time to move in
I
on
think.
him.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you went to UCLA, were you going to pursue a musical career?
I picked Los Angeles because of the geographical implications of everything. I knew that to play with this was the concentration of the greatest musicians in the world. We're here.
Well, what about New York? No?
New York's got great musicians, but here you have not only great musicians, but you had the mainstay of that period of time, which was pop music and film, was predominantly here.
You talked about your cousin teaching you different things, and then you talked about orchestrations with symphonic music, and you did write a tone poem.
I did.
On Rabin.
I was in 1994 when Rabin was assassinated. I was very deeply emotionally moved, and I spent 6 months just. It goes back a little bit further than that. I was watching the Oslo Accords with Clinton and how everything was developing, and I once saw Rabin speak on television, and he was, I don't know, this man was transcended.
Just moved you.
It moved me even before he was assassinated. I started to get I threw myself into Israeli politics a little bit around that time.
Did you
because
go
it was
there?
like Sadat, you know?
Right, in Egypt, yeah.
In Egypt, when he tried to make a difference, and then he was shot,
Well, and the two of them were friends.
Yeah, oh yeah. And Rabin was a warrior. He was, to me, the dichotomy of somebody coming from a military background is staunch as he did, and as vast as he did, and what he contributed to Israeli society as a military hero to go to peace is a beautiful transition.
In the Middle East, he was really revered.
Yeah.
Because we were in Jordan one year, and there were people who were going to see Mrs. Rabin. I mean, she had all these people all over the Middle East. Yeah.
Leia, I wrote the fourth movement of that piece is dedicated to her.
Is it? Is it beautiful? She's
it's
so
adagio.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't have to talk about inspiration because those things are what inspire you to write symphonic pieces, I guess.
Yeah, I kind of gravitate towards I like to write works of music that I have not written an opera. I've written some arias and some things of that nature. Yeah.
Is that next?
Oh, I wrote the opening, my first movie of Joan Quinn. I wrote an aria for I wrote my own version of my own Ave Maria.
Well, let's talk about Joan Quinn, because that was your breaking into film, right, with Cassavetes?
Yeah, my first film.
So how did you get that?
Oh, I'll try to tell it really quick. He and I befriended each other about maybe a few years before that film, and I wrote some music for his plays.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I wrote
a movie. They used music in the
Sometimes,
theater?
just a little, little tidbit here and there, and he actually came to that event when my piece was performed here in Los Angeles with the Jewish Federation sponsoring it. It was quite a large orchestra, and it was a big event, and Yitzhak Rabin's son Yuval attended, and Nick Cassavetes attended. And Nick first heard my approach to symphonic music. And he said, one day we were running together, because we used to run together, he said, you know what, someday you're going to score one of my movies. And this was like 2 years before anything happened, and we just remained friends. And Joan Quinn came, he gave me the shot, and I went in hired a 65-piece orchestra to do the demo of his opening to show the film company that I could do this.
So did you have to audition those 65 people?
I
who they are.
I wrote a piece of music to existing film that he gave me,
yeah.
And he said, I can't promise you the gig, but go ahead and take your shot. Here's the film sequence. It was a 6-minute opening sequence. I went in with my own money and my own
Oh, that's
time.
what you mean. That's
yeah,
what I
and
meant.
I went in and I was at that time I had really been almost out of work for almost a year because I kind of stopped. Not that I love pop music and I love what it is, but for me it wasn't filling my soul anymore, and I just pretty much predominantly listened to classical music, so I kind of quit. I retired from making pop records and working in that medium for about a year, and then I finally got a break.
But in the 80s, you were a studio musician.
Yeah,
what
80s
is that?
and 90s.
What is that? 80s. What is that? What do you do as a?
Well, as a studio musician, I mean, all these, for instance, some of the great studio keyboard players. David Foster was a great studio musician before he became David Foster.
Oh, is that what happens? So what do? You play?
We play.
Could you play with this
accompany
band?
them. We accompany them, just like a accompanist. A lot of us, a lot of the composers much greater than I am. Say, take John Williams. He started out as I believe the MGM pianist, and
you were a pianist. So
and I was a pianist, so I backed up bands and people and different artists and all kinds of records, and producers producing those records, right? Want to call somebody like me, or there's another gentleman around that time, say Randy Kerber, or there were about five or six, seven of us in town that were kind of the mainstay of okay, that guy, call that guy, and he'll arrange your chart and he'll play keyboards on it.
So what studio is it? I didn't understand.
There were no studios. Studios are record companies.
I see.
So you see, with records, it was record companies.
Right.
With films, it's studios.
Oh, I see. It's that studio, the
so
film
Warner Brothers
studio.
Records, Warner Brothers also has a film. A lot of the big record departments back then had film departments. Not all of them, but Warner Brothers, Sony.
Right.
So the labels are, everything's intertwined a little bit.
So you do all these. You do a lot of different things because as a musician, as we said, you're a composer, okay, and you're a producer. So that means you're producing somebody else's work. You're an arranger. You're arranging somebody else's work, right?
Yeah, those words, which are kind of
so many
synonymous with what I did back in the 80s and the 90s, are good. But now with film, I'm just technically a composer.
Is that what it's called now?
Yeah, and I orchestrate a lot of my own work.
Okay, so in the 90s, your work was featured in Mulan, Birdcage, Caddyshack. Were those just individual songs?
Yeah, those were just individual songs. Some of them I produced, some of them I arranged and produced.
I see.
Producing is really a sense, let me give you an explanation of a producer on records. A producer on a record is very much like synonymous what a director is to a movie. Producer has like complete creative
Okay.
control. So the producer
right.
will call the arranger, or the producer may be an arranger himself and does everything else.
Like
I did a
you,
lot of that.
Like you, yeah.
And so, you know, for me as a producer, most of the time I played the, as a keyboard player back coming from a world of synthesizers and electronics, besides the mainstay of being a pianist, which I am, you have, you can, back then you could have an array of string sounds and synthesizer sounds. So we were very much in demand in the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And then with the kind of rise and development and advancement of computers now have made it possible for lots of people to do their own work, and they don't need guys like us.
Oh, that's what I wondered. So then those were in the 80s, 90s studio musician, you were having your work in different films. But then you've written music for over 30 films, and you're a composer for, say,
I've written and composed the music
like
for about
Flash of Genius and Sex and the City and the Tyler Perry movies.
I do the Tyler Perry, so I did The Notebook in 2003.
Do you work for the same people all the time?
I repeat with a lot of the same
That's what I
directors,
wondered.
and I work with different and new directors all the time.
Does the director call you if you've, like, obviously the Tyler Perry's, because you keep working with
Yeah.
him, and Sex and the City, you're doing another
Michael
one?
Patrick King, I'm doing the second one with him.
But let me ask you about this. I noticed on this whole list of work that you did, you worked a lot with Lionsgate, or you worked a lot with Disney or New Line. Do you do repeats with those
Yeah,
other ones?
I hope so. Boy,
I want it.
I want to repeat with them, because
Is that what it
then you
is?
figure, maybe they like you, absolutely. You want to be able to. I always strive with trying to make something positive out of every working relationship that I encounter.
And when you're composing, like we know with your tone poem, your symphonic piece, that Rabin was your inspiration. What happens when you go into some, kind of lightweight film?
Well, you always find something that you connect to. And
That you connect
yeah,
to?
absolutely. I mean,
see.
in whatever may be construed as a lightweight film, I always find, to someone else, I always find something, a scene, there's always something that grabs you.
But that's great, because that's what you need, right?
Well, you need to, and then sometimes if something it has a weak foundation, you look at it as, okay, I'm going to make this better in every way possible, and you go to craft. You go to, like, this is what I've been trained to do.
Actually, when I remember seeing Sex and the City, I remembered the flourishes in the music, and the music felt like it was driving the whole film. It was like uplifting. So, I mean, do you watch them run around the city and then you do this kind of exciting music?
I did Sex and the City right after I composed the music for Flash of Genius. And I came back from London, and I sat in the cutting room with Michael Patrick King, who I adore, and I think that he is a genius in the fact that he made probably one of the greatest films for women, and and it wasn't just for women in the sense, because there's a scene where Big has a problem, trouble making his vows. And I watched the whole film. What to me, when it happens, if I write something that has an emotional, kind of through line, I have to find that one scene that grabs me. And that one, when he was struggling with Carrie to make, they were on the phone, and she's on the phone, and this, I don't know if you remember it, but there was this one scene where he's just kind of not sure, and she says, go to bed, and when you wake up in the morning, it's going to be all right. And right there, you sense the fear in her, and this vulnerable trepidation and fear in him, and so I related that to that as a man.
And then that's how you can
and that really got me. And then that was the signal. And then I just set this one great quote. When you go through a relationship, or you go through a painful situation, it may not be a relationship, so just something, and you're scarred or you're imprinted by that thing in your life that happened either when you were 20, 30, 35, 40, whatever it may be. As we find there's those things that we just can't let go of, or we have our memories. And so Michael Patrick King said to me, this is one of the greatest quotes ever, he said, in this movie, I want you to push on the bruise.
Oh, which makes you hurt.
So she was, you know, it's like you know when you just
Yes.
lost somebody and you had that, you say you had that favorite song in common, but you go flip that song on and just because you want to hear it and you want to push on the bruise, you want to, you go to that. It's like you know, people who drink, you know, maybe too much.
Go to the furthest.
Yeah, you want to go back to the drink because that's whatever that is, whatever your maudlin or over sentimental thing gets you there.
But
That's what that movie did for me. There was a lot of stuff in that film.
you know, let me differentiate between when I say lightweight and symphonic is what I was really talking about.
No, I get what you're
Music
saying.
and
Sometimes you have
symphonic.
landscapes to like for instance, you know,
Yeah.
Flash of Genius was a 60s noir kind
Right.
of tone. I mean, there's a chance for me to like break out my chops, you know.
Yeah.
And there's certain films like Sex and the City that, you know, I have to serve a very, you know, fitted role. You know, I can't come out and talk too much. I can't
Right.
spread my
you mean-
wings too much. I have to stay within the box.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what certain lighter films or whatever content you may you want to say, whatever opinions people have of them, you know, for me, I have to find my little position, my little thing where I'm not saying too much because you don't want to for me, I hate to be over over melodramatic.
But you bring it out in the music.
I try.
And it was so great for you to be with us today. I thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thanks for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles today.